Okay. Hello, and thank you for joining us on this web series, Your Goals. I said that wrong. We'll start all over again.
Start over.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on this web series, Your Story, Your Goals, and Your Dreams. We are here to help you write the story you want your life to be. I'm your host, Emo, founder of EjiTech. As you know, your number one asset is yourself. So we've devoted this series to bring you information and knowledge that keeps you healthy, financially secure, creative, and productive. Our guest today is Erica Blackburn. She's here to share tips and ideas to help our bodies and minds stay healthy. She runs a growing practice in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and is helping changing lives one person at a time. Erica, welcome to the show.
Hi, Emo. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Erica. Now, before we dive in, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So as Emo shared, I run a healing practice based in energy medicine in Halifax, Nova Scotia, but I serve clients all over the world. My background is in business, which is where Emo and I met at the Sobe School of Business. I always say my two favorite things have come together in my life, business and spirit. So I love working in the business field. I love studying business, but then there was also something inside of me that was calling me to study and investigate other parts of myself, body, mind, spirit. And that is what I'm doing now. And because I have been doing that for almost a decade, I am really inspired to share that with my clients and with other people.
Excellent. So I know you have a lot of certifications and education behind you. I went to your website and I've seen all of them. And of course, we were MBA students together. So can you just give us a little bit of a background of your education and certification that backs your practice and what you do?
Absolutely. So I do have a background in business from St. FX and also from St. Mary's. And I truly love business. That's why I studied it twice. I love all aspects of business. However, when I was in business school, there was also this calling to study like holistic healing as well. And so yoga became the first thing that I studied. I'm trained as a yoga instructor, have been teaching for 8 years, became trained as a life coach, a Reiki master teacher, a BodyTalk practitioner, a consciousness investigative agent, and I'm actually studying Chinese medicine now. So
Wow.
yeah, it's a lot of things, but here's what it all boils down to, because I'm a lifelong learner, which I'm sure many of the people watching, many of the people who Emo, like also love to continue to learn and grow and evolve. And so my practice is really about boiling down all of those things, all of those different practices, and giving the best of all of those pieces, like making it whole and giving the best to the people that I work with.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about your practice. For example, the connection between being healthy, productive, and wealthy. The history, science, and theory behind energy medicine, for example. What is it? And the basic principles, just things like that. And most importantly, why should people care? Why should people pay attention to all of this?
Well, I think a lot of people at some point in their life find like they feel like they are in this constant cycle of doing activity, but something in them still feels like it's missing, or there's a disconnection. There's a desire for peace, for balance within, and yet the people that I work with somehow along the way have lost that, or they're looking for it. Right. So energy medicine is really based in the fact that there's an interconnectedness in the world, and there's also an interconnectedness within us. And scientifically, it's based in quantum physics, that when we can look at the very foundation of something, of anything, it's not actually material, it's not actually matter. What it is waves of potential. So energy potential.
Right.
And by someone observing that, they collapse that potential into a possibility that becomes an outcome. And what happens is often there's this idea of like getting stuck in a rut. We kind of get stuck in a rut based on our belief systems that has us operating habitually or pathologically. And then we have experiences in our life that seem like they're out of balance with who we really are. And so fundamentally, energy medicine helps to restore that harmony and that balance within us, within each of us,
Okay.
so that we can actually come back to who we really are.
Right. Now, so who's your typical audience or client or patient?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, it is men, women, it literally is beyond any label that we might put on ourselves as humans. What makes someone a really good fit for this work is that there's a willingness to evolve. There's a willingness to look inside oneself and say, like what's really happening here? What is it that I feel like I am missing or is disconnected? And as long as that openness is there, the work can be done really effectively. And it doesn't matter your background. It doesn't matter what your career is. Like, this can really serve everyone as long as, at a kind of a deep soul level, there's a willingness to be open to what might shift and change. And usually it's just becoming more whole. That's the change.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. So I guess a lifelong learner, or somebody who's just, like you said, open to wanting to find out more, wanting to discover more, wanting to improve, that kind of stuff.
Yes, very
Excellent.
much so.
Okay. Now, one question before I go into the main meat of the whole thing is, so how young, what's the youngest client you've ever had, age-wise?
Yeah, I mean, I have done energy work on my friend's newborn baby. She was 6 weeks old. I've done energy work on my sister's puppy who was 10 weeks old. Like, now, puppies and newborn babies don't necessarily need energy work the way that adults do, because they are so much more connected to that harmony and that balance within them. I have done energy work with a 4-year-old girl. So the age is not really what matters. It's usually when someone starts to experience a disharmony or an imbalance in their life. And so often that starts to actually happen for people between the age of like 8 to 12 into teenage years. So that might not be the age that we actually seek out that kind of work, because we're children, we don't know about it.
Right.
However, it literally can help anyone at any age, but it's about age 8 that our belief systems become solidified and start to actually create that interference for the balance, the harmony, the innate peace from actually being our experience. And so many of us have lived a full life being disconnected from that. And as much as it would have been lovely to receive that reconnection when we were 8 or 12 or a younger age, it's obviously not that realistic. Although I do have parents asking about if they should bring their children and what that could look like. And usually for children, it means they don't need as much time. They don't need as many sessions.
Right.
Right. And sometimes it's even though the parents are asking about their children, it's also the parents that might need their own help and support with this kind of work.
Right. Now, you talked about people being aware of the change or not being aware that something is out of balance. Like, do you have a lot of people who come in and go, well, I didn't know something was out of balance? Do you have that happen? Or like, how do people become aware that they need, if you don't know it's broken, then it's hard to go look for a fix because you don't know it's broken. You just know things are not working well and you have manifestations or symptoms of things that are just not going right, but you just don't know something is wrong. So how do you get people to, or how do people figure out, how do you get people to know that something's not right?
Yeah. Well, usually we can see it in like symptoms or clues in our environment. So maybe there's a breakdown in our physical health. Maybe there's a breakdown in our relationships. Maybe there's a breakdown in our finances or something in our physical environment that we desire it to be different. And it is true that often people come to me after they've tried a lot of other things, because
Right.
fixing the external never actually works sustainably. We have to go inward. We have to have that courage and that curiosity to actually want to do the deeper inner work. And that is what can have more sustainable and lasting impacts, because we're coming back to wholeness within. And inevitably, when we have that within, we will experience that outside of ourselves or externally.
So it's from the inside out, healing from the inside out.
That's right. That's really the only
Okay.
way that it can happen. And it's also healing from the top down. So
Okay.
if you imagine, this is another kind of principle of energy medicine, is a theory called downward causation. So if you imagine a triangle, and that triangle is split from top to bottom into 5 sections. The top is bliss, and then innate wisdom, and then our mental body, our vital body, and our physical body. So energetic medicine and consciousness medicine works higher up the triangle. So rather than working on the more dense parts of us, like the physical part of us, we work at a higher vibration, which then creates change down the entire triangle and all levels or dimensions of us.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Erica, that's a lot to go through, and I'm glad we'll touch on this later on. You have videos, and you have things on YouTube, and you have things on social media and on your website that people can go to, correct?
Yes. So my YouTube page is a really lovely resource for how to get started. So there's meditations, there's yoga practices, there are some podcasts, some ways to actually start to explore what could this look like for me. And then on my website, there's ways to contact me so that we can actually have a conversation. Because honestly, while I have developed like a process and a method, because I've been doing this for such a long time with people, it also is very customized. Like we work one-on-one, or we work in small groups in order to customize this experience for the person receiving it. It's not like a one size fits all necessarily. It really depends on where each individual is at when we connect. And so that's always a good place to start, either with those free resources or with a call, a connection, so that we can actually see, like, where are you at and what does that mean for what you need to support you.
Excellent. Now, Erica, I'm going to kind of go through a bunch of questions that are kind of typical questions that people in the audience, or people who are curious about what you do, might want to ask. So, for example, what does it mean to be healthy and well? What does that mean to you?
Well, what's really interesting is that health in itself is defined as being free of illness or injury. But wellness is really about going from a state of only surviving to a state of thriving. And I think that health and wellness is also even more than that. It's really about being in tune and in alignment with who we really are. And I truly believe that we each have that already inside of us. And sometimes we just need support and help to actually excavate that out of us, so that we're really living in a way that's in alignment with what we're meant to do, what we're here to do, so that we're each contributing to humanity in the way that like our heart desires.
Excellent. Now, second, beyond eating, sleeping, and exercise, what practices do you recommend for healthfulness?
Yes. So this would really depend on where someone is on their own path or their own kind of progress in their health, wellness, spiritual evolution. But with my clients, it's about breathing, like first and foremost, like breathing, movement, whatever that movement might look like, whether it's yoga or walking or Tai Chi, forms of movement that are supportive and gentle for the body, for the joints. I teach clients how to do tapping techniques on themselves to help to allow the brain to reprogram itself, to allow the body to actually release what is not needed anymore, and to integrate what maybe has been waiting to be integrated. I do teach people how to do centering and meditation. for most people, not all people, but for most people, that will be a really supportive practice to actually start to feel centered and aligned with what might feel like it's missing. You know, it will bring you back to balance and harmony in a very quick way.
So is that the definition of centering? Or what is the definition of centering?
Well, I think for me, the definition of centering is that you are literally in the center of yourself, your experience, and your life. It's about self-agency.
Okay.
I think that because our world is as it is, we can feel pulled in many different directions. And so centering is really about being able to find that still, quiet, peaceful place within ourself and living from that place.
Excellent. Now, Erica, I'm sure you have ideas on how to incorporate wellness into an already busy lifestyle. We're all very busy, it seems, these days. So what are your thoughts on that? You know, how do you do that?
I mean, I think first of all, we have to have compassion toward ourselves for like, you know, we're generally all doing our best. And so there's like this moment of consideration, like what do I need to now take myself that next step forward? And again, it's going to be different for each person. And sometimes it literally is like scheduling these practices into our daily life.
Right.
Sometimes it's removing things from our life. Like sometimes it's actually like doing a little self audit and realizing that some things are ready to fall away.
Right.
And I think it's important that each person, you know, whether there's a support of someone like myself to help someone decide what needs to be added or what needs to be taken away, or whether an individual is kind of checking in with their own intuition to say, like, what is a priority today for me? Is it a priority to go for a walk? Is it a priority to meditate? Is it a priority? It's usually a priority to take a moment for ourselves.
Right.
Right. And so sometimes we have to build those practices in the beginning, and then eventually they become a way of life.
I think I can relate to that last one because I know personally, because I always have ideas on things to do. You almost have to pick and choose and say, you know what, I have 20 ideas, but I can only do one, or I can only do two, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Although I'm happy to have many ideas to work on. It's better than having none and scrambling around. But I know we have to pick and choose and say, what's the best use of my time now? What should I be doing now? What's the best thing for Emo? What's the best thing for Emo's family at this point in time? And then try to do that. So yes, prioritizing and scheduling the things that are important. And maybe sometimes it might be being mindful of, or sitting back to ask the question, is this really important? Because there are quite a number of things that are busy, but they're not necessarily important, right? And if you have many of those things, then you might spend more time doing the things that are just, oh yeah, you did it, but it's not the important stuff, the things that actually impact or create the biggest value in your life. So I find for myself personally, I can relate to that because I always have to make those decisions almost on a daily basis because there's so many things I want to do, you know, but we can't do it all, right? So yes, I hear you on that one. Now, which leads to my next question. How have you adopted your practice during this pandemic? You know, what changes have you made, you know, to reassure clients and whatever about safety in your practice, and what's different now with the pandemic for you in terms of how you run your business?
Well, certainly now that we are able to, you know, see each other in person again, when I work with people in person, we are following all of the guidelines that the government has provided to stay healthful and well. You know, hand washing and masks, distancing when possible. And the beautiful thing about energy work and energy medicine is that we don't actually need to be in person to have it effectively done. And so a lot of my clients now are actually receiving this work that I do online, like this platform Zoom. But I do have clients all over the world, even before the pandemic. And so we were doing work online. It really serves itself well because my clients get to be in their comfortable environment at home or wherever their comfortable environment is and receive this work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Now, I think I have about 2 or 3 more questions. So How does energy healing support health and wellness? Why are people turning to energy healing? When did this come into the scene? And is this something that has been in from way back when, or is this just new to North America, but it's been around in Asia for a while? What's the history behind that?
I would say that the history goes back thousands of years, right? If we are looking back at the practice of yoga, for example, or the practice of Chinese medicine, this is something that has existed for thousands of years. The way that it is then getting modified to fit North American culture might feel a little bit more new or new age, but the fundamental practices and philosophies of energy medicine are timeless,
Mm.
honestly. And so that is really the root of the work that I like to do with people, is like, let's go back to the actual foundation of these practices. Because yes, there is a lot that sometimes gets picked up by pop culture or by fads or trends. And I'm not necessarily saying that we should jump on every fad or every trend that calls itself energy healing or energy medicine. But the way that I practice with clients and the studying that I've done with the teachers that I've studied with, it really is about going back to the fundamentals of these practices, connecting us back with our consciousness, connecting us back with who we really are, and then seeing the impacts of that in our lives and then in the world. Because the thing about energy medicine or energy healing is that we are also all interconnected. So as one of us evolves, we are all impacted by that. And so then it becomes a contribution to the whole world that we are each choosing to be more self-responsible and more responsible for our own evolution.
Nice. Now, is it safe? Are there any side effects? Can it be combined with other forms of medicine or health practices?
Yes, this is actually a great question, because just because we participate in energy medicine doesn't mean that we're never going to use the beautiful foundation of Western medicine, right? Like, there is really a time and place for both. And in places like Europe and places like Australia and New Zealand, and even some places in the US now, I believe, they're really doing a lovely job of combining both
Both,
Western
okay.
medicine and energetic medicine, because they support each other. Western medicine is so helpful if there's an acute situation. Like, of course, we want Western medicine if there's something that's happening in the moment that we need support with. But energy medicine can often help with chronic conditions, or it can support acute situations so that a more, like a faster form of healing is possible. So they work very well together. And it is actually starting to be something that's evolving in medicine, that there's not a distinction between this or that, right? The parts are actually coming together as a whole. These are all forms of medicine that can serve each other. So it can be used with other forms of holistic or alternative medicine, or a more modernized or Western form of medicine. And because it's very gentle and non-invasive, I think this is why people are turning to energy medicine, is because at some point we need a gentle approach, especially if someone has experienced a lot of different things in the medical community. They might need something that can help them in a way that is a little more gentle. I mean, I have had a surgery before, and I found it to be, the doctors and the nurses were amazing, but just the experience of going through surgery, I needed like loving support to continue my process of healing after it. And
Right.
so this can help with pre-care and post-care to other forms of medicine that someone might be experiencing. And eventually, maybe it means that someone is taking a proactive approach to their health. They might not need Western medicine in the same way, which would really be incredible, because there's so much pressure on the medical system now to kind of take care of everything. And I think we can see that that is not a sustainable model. And so things need to start to shift and change, kind of working together so that we can all be well.
Excellent. Now, the last one is, can you explain the practice of yoga from a physical perspective and an energetic perspective?
Absolutely. So yoga, the foundation of yoga is actually 8 limbs, the 8 limbs of yoga. And so the physical practice of yoga, the asana, is the third of those 8 limbs. The first 2 are really about how we show up in the world, how we're living in the world. We might call them like the do's and don'ts. And then the physical practice. And then it progresses to breathing practices, going inward, the ability to contemplate and concentrate, meditation, and then just like working up the triangle that I talked about in downward causation. It's about going back to bliss, which is the 8th limb, to become one again with who we really are. And so often it's sometimes easier to start with physical movement to get us there, but eventually we can progress to come back to who we really are, which is bliss. And yoga was meant to allow people to sit for longer periods of time in meditation. It prepared the body to sit still and in that space of silence and quiet within.
Nice. Excellent. So at the end of this, I'm going to include links to your website and to your YouTube channel in the description part of the the video. But in summary, if you wanted to give people some pieces of information or a takeaway, a couple of key takeaways from this, what will you say those are? Something you can take away, and work with.
Yeah. So I think the immediate takeaways are giving yourself time each day to be still, even if that's 1 minute. Like 1 minute to check in with yourself, to get yourself centered, because it's from that place that our intuition or our innate wisdom starts to speak. And from that place, it's much more clear on what are our priorities, where we need to focus our time and our energy. And so getting still and having a moment of centering each day would be like the first quickest takeaway. The second would be movement, like having some type of movement in your day, whether it is like a 10-minute walk or whether there's another practice of movement that we do. It doesn't necessarily have to be, more than even 30 minutes. But this is key for getting into our physical body and out of our head. And then ironically, when we get out of our head, it's easier to actually work with our belief systems and start to shift those belief systems so that we can come back to harmony within ourselves. And then the last takeaway would be to kind of ask oneself, like what is the next step for me? Like, what am I ready for? What am I open and willing and ready to step into for my own evolution? Because that's going to look different for everybody. And it's so beautiful that it does look different for everyone, because we're each this unique expression of bliss. But that contemplation piece is really important.
Excellent. Well, Erica, thank you very much for all you've unpacked this hour. And again, I'm going to include the links below it so that people can get a hold of you to ask any other questions. I suspect you do have there's a contact form and everything on your website that if people want to ask you things directly, they could do that, correct?
Absolutely. And I would love to receive questions so that I can help support people with where they are.
Excellent. Well, thank you once again, and have yourself a blissful week. And I will be talking to you soon. You take care now.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.